Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're back in War Thunder, and I think it's time to go through some of the news. So if you didn't hear, there is a planned technical work for the 14th of the 3rd, 2018, and it is going to be at 8 AM GMT. So pretty much around the time this video will be released, or just after it. This planned technical works is for update 1.77 Advancing Storm. The one which, well, I've been covering on the dev server for the last week or so. So it looks like it's coming straight to the game pretty quickly, with a few minor changes. There was also another nice blog post or development post about the modern tank realism and balance. This is where the Gaijin team, or the development team, went through their, where they got the information from on the tanks, why it's hard to gather this information, and all of this. And as somebody who said in the past that sometimes it can feel like we don't know where this stuff is coming from, or where the ideas of specific armor, specific ammunition, penetrations are coming from, it is nice to see them create an article based on these newer tanks, since there's been a lot of talk over the last few weeks about where are they actually getting this information from, because obviously a lot of this stuff is classified. So if you want to read their opinion on where they got all of their information from, go and read that article. I would actually say it's definitely worth it, especially if you are one of those people who was asking for sources, or was asking for information on where they were getting their stuff from. For me personally, I don't like the fact that if we actually look at the blog post itself, they pretty much use the prototype variants of the M1 and the Challenger as the armor, and then kind of build from there. Now, I understand why you would do that, but it just means that we will have worse armor on the Challenger and the Abrams compared to what it would actually be. And I understand that, there'll be many disagreements about this in the comments section about whether that is true or not, but just let me know. Don't let me know, but let me tell you from my point of view, there isn't normally a prototype tank which has exactly the same armor as the fully produced version. There is going to be a difference there, and when you're comparing the XM1 to the Abrams, there is a difference. If you're comparing the MBT-80, and they also used a export version of the Challenger, the Shear 2, which was pretty much a Challenger 1, but obviously it's an export, so it's going to have different armor, it's going to have different technology, all of this stuff to create the Challenger. Then, to me, this seems like we are getting the MBT-80 or the Shear 2. We are not getting the Challenger 1, just like with the Abrams. Instead of the Abrams, we're getting the XM1, and it doesn't feel great from my perspective, but at least it's very nice of them to actually lay out, their sources and where they get their information from. The last bit of news, which is pertaining to the last video I made, and also some concerns that the community has had, this is posted by Mike10D on the War Thunder Reddit, and it's from the dev server files. It seems like the BRs of the top tier tanks have changed. So the Abrams, Challenger 1, T-64B are all going to be sat at 9.3 now. Now before, they were at 9.0. The Leopard 2K stays at 8.7, and the AMX-30 is sitting at 8.72. So this means that we won't get 9.0 vehicles against 8.0 vehicles. Basically, the range of top tier now will be 9.3 to 8.3. So in my opinion, that's a lot better, especially to specific buffs that certain vehicles have got, such as the Leopard A1A1 with its APFSDS and all of that. So that's nice. What is also kind of annoying, but a great thing at the same time, is along with this post, you may see at the bottom there, it says the Object 906 now has hull brake. Now, in terms of the game and how it works, this is wonderful. In terms of my actual video producing thing, this was kind of annoying, because I made a whole video about how rules have to be applied across the board to everything. And this was going to be in reference to the Object 906, because we have the Object 120, the RU-251 now with hull brake, the T-92, the Ontos, and the 906 has worse armor than the RU-251, but it wasn't subject to hull break. Now, it is going to be subject to hull break. So that video idea has been scrapped. But if you want like just a short TLDW of a video you'll never watch, or maybe you will in the future, depending if something like this happens again, if we have a rule in War Thunder or a rule in a game, it has to be applied across the board. It cannot individually pick out vehicles that it can affect and not affect others, especially if those vehicles are pretty much the same, because if you do that, then you create unfairness within the system. And the Object 906, if it didn't have hull break, which it will have in update 1.77, would have been the epitome of unfairness, comparing it to even its own brethren in the Object 120, which has the same armor as it, but it was susceptible to the hull break mechanic. But yeah, that video idea is out of the window for now, because obviously it has been fixed, so that is good. What we're going to talk about today is more of a general topic. So one of the things that I've thought about for a very long time is, with the addition of more and more vehicles which have pushed the boundaries of each in air and also ground. So in ground we have stuff like the MBT-70, the KPZ-70, the T-64A, the Chieftain Mark 10, and now, a few patches later, after the French are introduced, we have the Abrams, the Challenger, the T-64B, and of course the Leopard 2K. We have had a lot of top-tier content for ground forces recently. We also had the new tech tree for France, which came out, I believe, in 7.3 and 7.5 after the MBT and the KPZ patch, and that was the air forces for France and the ground forces for France, and that was really, really fun. And even before that, we had a bunch of top-tier jets which were pretty much pushing the envelope. I think the most recent ones are stuff like the MiG-17, you have the Hunter F1. If you want to add in the Votor in that, then you can also do that, but that's for separate reasons. But the thing is, at the end of the day, we have all of this new content expanding the ranks, expanding the BRs, but one of the issues that I've realized while playing specific vehicles is that we have an issue of between nations not being able to use specific mechanics which can be incredibly beneficial to them at specific ranks. So I'm going to use two examples here. One I've actually used in the past, and another which I think fits this as well. So the first one is anti-aircraft vehicles. Anti-aircraft vehicles is a very key part of the game, and some nations, Britain and Russia, or USSR specifically, do not have access to any AA between the 4.7 and 7.7 bracket. Now, you could say this is because historically, they didn't have any AA which could fit this, but I've already done videos talking about vehicles which you could put in between this 4.7 and 7.7 bracket, and instead of focusing on these vehicles to actually fill the gaps that you have in the trees, in specific parts of the trees, what seems to be happening is we're pushing for new tech trees, we're pushing for rank 6, we're pushing for rank 6 aircraft as well, and what is happening is we're creating these little rifts or voids in these tech trees which are not filled with anything, meaning that other nations which will face you have an advantage with that specific vehicle. So if we look at the USSR or Britain, they have a 4.7 AA. The 4.7 AA in itself is pretty dire, in the form of the ZSU and also the Crusader Mark 1. If we compare that to another nation, how about we look at Germany? So Germany has access to the Kugelblitz and the Coelian, and that is before the Russians have access to the 57 and the British have access to the Falcon. So with their rank 4 lineup, the Tiger 2 era, the Panther 2 even, if you want to talk about that BR, they are able to use a AA which is pretty close to their top BR, where the British and the USSR are relegated to using a much more worse AA which isn't designed to fight at that BR. And this causes an issue. This means that a nation has an advantage over another one, not because of specific tactics or anything like that, but because one nation just does not have the ability to have that mechanic allowed to them if they want to use a full like rank 4 lineup or a full BR 6.7 7.0 lineup. So with AA you can see it's kind of an issue. But a new mechanic which has been added to the game recently, or at least in terms of War Thunder recently, is the Scout mechanic. Now specific light tank destroyers have this mechanic, and also light tanks. So the M56, which I would class as a tank destroyer, the BMP, which I would also class as a tank destroyer, these have the scouting mechanic, where light tanks, such as stuff like the T-92, also have it. The RU-251 also has this. Oh, and by the way, with the AA points, I understand that you have the Type 65, I believe it is, the AA for the USSR, but I discount this because it's a gift vehicle. Putting gift vehicles into this discussion pretty much just means that, well, they're not, the majority of the community doesn't have them, so therefore it doesn't really work out. I'm trying to get it from a position of a player who just plays the normal tech tree, disregarding premiums and gift vehicles. But anyway, back to the point. So this scout mechanic is available for a lot of light tank destroyers and scout tanks. Now, one of the issues with that is if you look at a nation like Britain, Britain doesn't really have any light vehicles right now, especially at the rank 4 area. America is filled with them. The Ontos, the T-92, the Scorpion, and even the Bulldog, if you want to throw that in there. At least Germany has access to a premium in the form of the RU-251. If we look at the USSR, you have the Object 906. You also have access to the Type, I believe it's 67, which is the gift one. But once again, we're disregarding that. They still have the Object 906. There is something in that 60 to 70 bracket that can be used by the USSR. But the British don't have that. The mechanic to them is not allowed to be used. It is impossible to be used because they don't have any light vehicles, or I suppose you would, in quotations, call them scout vehicles. Now, instead of just giving the mechanic to specific mediums and heavy tanks, which are maybe underperforming compared to their medium and heavy tank counterparts, it would be much better for, or at least in my mind, to be able to add vehicles to the game which fill these gaps with these mechanics involved. This would mean you would get some more interesting vehicles, such as different versatile vehicles. Maybe you throw in a Scorpion for the British. Maybe you find some specific armored cars, which wouldn't be very good at fighting the enemy, but they would be absolutely beautiful scouts. Maybe you find an AA, which can sit around that 5.7, 6.7 mark, which would actually be useful. You know, a lot of people bring up the Skink. I mean, I personally don't think the Skink would be that good, but at least it's an option there for you. All of these options could fill a void in the tech tree that you see, meaning that certain nations would lose the power of just having one mechanic over the other one. I don't like seeing a nation being able to use a specific mechanic over another nation, because I understand that a lot of people think that scouting doesn't do a lot, but scouting is incredibly important to an experienced player. If you can see it scouted on the map, that means that you know exactly where it is, and if you're not able to shoot it, at least you know where one of the enemy tanks is. Maybe it's moving. At the same time, it all depends on if you're looking at the map, which, you know, all of you should. Rule 1 of War Thunder, look at your mini-map. Look at it every 5 seconds to 10 seconds. It's not hard to do. But anyway, back to the point. All of these factors, especially at later tiers, rank 4, 5, and 6, absolutely amalgamate into issues which nations will run into in general. Meaning that if one nation has the ability to have these mechanics, but another nation does not, what is going to happen is one of the nations is just going to be inferior to the other one. And we're not going to see this in statistics. One of the things that has been talked about a lot is the fact that Gaijin do balance BRs along the lines of statistics. So if they see a aircraft or tank doing extremely well, what they will do is they will change its BR after a while to be able to, I suppose you'd say, pseudo-nerf the thing. So if something has an insane victory rate, if something has an insane KD, then what they will do is they'll try and change its BR to make sure that it's, is not as overpowered as it once was. Now, stats like scouting, or stats like which specific vehicles are sat at specific BRs, is something that I feel like would not be taken into account as much as something like KD or win ratio, or just general, effectiveness of the vehicle. And this means that factors like this get overlooked, but it is a massive factor. The fact that one nation has the ability to have a specific vehicle with a specific set of mechanics behind it, and the nation that it's fighting does not, is a massive thing. Which is why, instead of pushing to have these modern day MBTs, I mean, they've already talked about the Leopard 2, the M1A1, and also stuff like the Type 90, or at least some kind of Japanese new rank 6 vehicle. Instead of pushing for these, in my opinion, it would be much better to focus on the gaps of the tech trees. And you don't have to focus on the gaps when it comes to BR. You just have to focus on the gaps of mechanics which you are missing at specific BRs. So if Britain doesn't have a rank 4 light tank, they should work towards having a rank 4 light tank. If the USSR does not have a rank 4 AA or a BRAA from 5.0 to 7.0, there should be something which is being able to put there. There must be something being worked on, because otherwise the USSR is just at a negative before it even starts the battle. This is massively emphasized by the Japanese right now. The Japanese have a situation with their tech tree where there are specific BRs which are okay. 6.3 is one of them. But if you start muddling around with specific medium tanks, you find yourself left in a zone where you only have one main tank that you can use, and that's really about it. And then once you use that tank, or once you die, you're pretty much left with nothing behind it, which is a real shame. I mean, the STA-1 has the Bulldog backing it, so that works well. But if you go up a little bit of a BR, you don't have anything to back up your tanks. And with other nations as well, if you look at France, 9.0 right now, I mean, I know we're getting the Brennus tomorrow, so there is that. But at 9.0 right now, all you have to do is, well, all you have is the AMX-1375 with the hot missiles, and if you decide to bring in planes, well, at least you can support it with planes. But there isn't anything else up there to be able to be useful with it. Everybody has run into specific parts of tech trees where it feels like there is either a tank destroyer missing, or a medium tank, or a heavy tank, or an AA, or a scout, which is designed to be there somewhere, where you kind of feel like your lineup is not fully complete. A lot of people with the Panther II probably felt it when he was bumped up to 7.0, because you didn't have the medium tank you could run at 6.7 with your Tiger 2H. My opinion is that we should look at these holes and fill them instead of pushing on with especially rank 6 aircraft, but what seems to be looking at rank 7 tanks with stuff like the M1A1 Abrams and also the Leopard 2. But anyway, as I said before, the update is coming tomorrow, or today, depending on when you watch this, and I will start doing reviews on some of the new vehicles and also some historical stuff. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.